Hello everybody, welcome to Vegetarian Cooking with Kevin, and in today's episode we're going to be making some pan lasagna. Let's start cooking. Alright, before we start cooking today, I'm going to go over the ingredients in this meal. Just like every meal I make, I don't really go out to the store and buy specific items for a specific meal. What I do is I look at my pantry and say, okay, I can make this out of it. So that's the premise behind all of these meals I make inside this show, is going to be what's in the pantry and what can I make out of it. So I raided the pantry and I found that I had a half an onion sitting in the fridge, some ricotta cheese, some Parmesan cheese, and some, whoa, got away from me, some fresh mozzarella. So I'm like, that seems like something I can make out of it, make an Italian dish with. Not to mention I also just happened, I know it's coincidental, I just happened to have a red sauce just left in the fridge from pizza I made yesterday, so that's good. And some lasagna noodles, about half a package left over, and some veggie ground. I know a lot of people, excuse me, don't want to crinkle that too hard. I know a lot of people don't like to use meat substitutes in their vegetarian meals, and that's fine. If you don't, just leave it out, or replace it with something like carrots or some other crunchy vegetable in there. It works just fine. Personally, I like the flavor and I like the accessibility of having a meat substitute. Also, let's be real here. Ground beef or ground turkey really isn't that great a quality meat anyway, so if you're going to be using that, this is probably, you won't notice the difference. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to prepare my vegetables that I'm using for today's meal. Onions, nice thing to do with onions is to kind of prepare them along the stem side so that when you cut them in half, you have this long elements of the onion that makes for easy strips. Normally I wouldn't cut this into strips. It's something I would particularly cut into, I would just chop. So I'm going to chop this instead. So I'm going to cut around the horizontal line right there, the detritus over there, and then I'm going to go ahead, peel the onion, get those first two layers of onion back, the really thin outer layer where it's kind of that slimy outer layer, and also peel back that really crunchy top layer. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this off into lengthwise segments along the entire axis of the onion, kind of getting that nice vertical pattern. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and chop down. Chop the onion. Then once you get about halfway through the onion, flip it on its side and chop down. And then for the end parts of the onion, I'm going to go ahead and chop once more. And then your leftover waste is this little bit. So maximize the real estate of your onion here. Go ahead and push these over to the side because I have one more thing to prepare. And that is my fresh mozzarella. For this fresh mozzarella, you can't really tear it the same way you tear part skim mozzarella, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it into cubes. I mean, I suppose you could tear it, but it's really wet, and I don't want to do that. So, you do you. If you want to go ahead and tear this, feel free. But I think it works a little bit better in a recipe like this to cut it into cubes. So I'm going to stack these, and I'm going to kind of hold them in place and firmly cut down, cutting through the entire bit of mozzarella stack here. I'm going to cut them into tiny cubes like this. Well, not really cubes, I guess. It's more of like slight rectangles. And when it gets over here, it's kind of smushy, so just make sure you get a firm grip on that. And bam, we have our prepared mozzarella cheese, and we have our prepared onions. So we're going to go ahead and use these. I'm going to go bring these over to the oven and stove over here, and I'm just going to go and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and turn on this stove and get it started heating, and going to shimmer some extra virgin olive oil, about a tablespoon and a half of extra virgin olive oil. We're going to let that get up to heat, and then we're going to add our onions. All right, now that oil is shimmering, let's go ahead and add these onions. add a little bit of salt and pepper. And finally, a cup of veggie ground. All right, as this is baking down, we're going to let it cook for a little bit. Just keep in mind that when you're using veggie ground, it kind of tends to stick to the bottom of the tray, so if you want to keep that nice and stirred up, we're going to wait for the onions to soften, then we're going to go ahead and add our red sauce. Attempt 2. Add in the red sauce. So as we add the red sauce, we're going to see that this actually is going to deglaze the bottom of the pan. We're going to add a whole bunch of that, probably the equivalent of about 4 cups, roughly. Nice good mix around, and all those burnt bits that were on the bottom of the pan are going to now be reincorporated as extra smoky flavor into the red sauce. And we're going to let this sauce, we're going to kind of scratch the bottom of the pan and kind of get this all incorporated in there. And we're going to let that sauce simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes. Let it go. With that simmering for about 2 minutes, we're going to head and add our water. 1 cup of water. So this red sauce is really thick, so this extra cup of water is going to allow the noodles to cook in that cup of water. All right, now that we got our sauce up to a boil, we're going to go ahead and reduce the heat down to simmer, and we're going to crack in a few pieces of lasagna. Just toss them in here. This is going to be a one-pan lasagna, so we're going to want to cook the noodles in lasagna. Now, this isn't going to win any prize for awards, or sorry, a prize for looks, but you know, it's going to taste good, and that's the important part. Go ahead and stuff those bad boys on in there. Stuff it down here, and put that here. Kind of just carry a little bit of sauce on top of it. And we're going to go ahead and top this with 1 additional cup of water. All right, we're going to let that rise up in temperature again now that we added that 2nd cup of water, and that's going to allow the pasta to cook inside there. Once the pasta gets to a nice, good cooked level, what we're going to do is we're actually going to add in our cheeses and then toss it in the oven for a brief amount of time to get those top cheeses melted. Throwing in the chopped mozzarella we did earlier. Go ahead and give it a nice, good stir in here. Create little flavor explosions of mozzarella in here. It's really nice. Spooning in some chunks of ricotta cheese. And dusting the entire thing off with some Parmesan. Now, if you're in the veg community, you know that not all Parmesan is created equal. This particular brand, Organic Valley, is vegetarian. So nobody says you can't enjoy Parmesan if you're vegetarian. All right, let's toss it in the oven. There you have it. After 30 minutes, you're greeted with a beautiful looking lasagna in a pan. Let me go ahead and do a nice little test here, see if the noodles are cooked. Ooh, baby, those noodles are nice and soft. All right, so it's just a matter of plating this up and serving it. All right, so some final thoughts and impressions. really saucy. So if you're gonna make this for yourself, I would make sure you add more noodles to it so you can get a little bit better, better noodle to sauce ratio. Other than that, it probably tastes pretty good. Yum. Anyway, see you guys in the next video.